Look at the jabs in round 12. 1 of 8, 3 of 8. 16 jabs in a round where there were literally 200 punches thrown. 78 for Conor Benn, 122 for Chris Eubank Jr. That's exactly 200 punches, and only 16 of them were jabs. Ridiculous, right? Nigel Benn and Chris Eubank Sr. being reunited in the ring. They had a couple of wars in the 90s. This is what set all this up. And it was good to see the two legends embrace. I thought that was very, very nice. Massive pop for Chris Eubank Sr. Surprise entrance joins his son, Chris Eubank Jr. here. Listen to that. Courtesy of Sky Sports.
Simply the best. And that is the picture of the year so far.
Tottenham Hotspur Stadium looked amazing. Amazing on the broadcast. One more time, just the crowd pop just absorbed this.
He's here! And the crowd are going wild! Father and son reunited! Simply the best!
Super cool. Also booing his son. In the process of that, in the midst of that. Okay, now for the actual fight, we have this from, we'll mute that for legal reasons. Round 11, Chris Eubank Jr. is leaving it all out there. Conor Benn is as well, but the activity from Chris Eubank Jr. down the stretch is really, I thought, what gave him this decision. We're going to look up the stats immediately after this, but give you a sense of the action here. Chris Eubank Jr. was getting tagged early with some of these looping shots that Conor Benn had, and then he was starting to box a little bit more. And then as Conor Benn regained control a little bit in rounds 8 and 9, Chris Eubank Jr. was really pushing it here. Just look at both of these guys, just how bad they want this. This is just a classic, how bad do you want this type of fight. Chris Eubank Jr. there, so that looking at the clock because he is tired of shit. It was a fight that it just took a lot out of the guys, and you could see it in the post-fight interviews. It took everything out of them. Like, they were really trying to get this. This is a fight that people have been wanting for a long time. It was going to happen years ago, and obviously Conor Benn had some issues as to, there was a reason why this didn't happen when it was supposed to initially, steroids. But we got it ultimately. Now for the punch stats. Okay, this is very, very critical here. Now, I want to say on the front end, I've said here before, and obviously not a lot of people watch this, so I got to say it time and time again until people do. But as somebody who's been covering boxing for a while now, years, I tell people you cannot judge a fight on stats alone. Just like how I tell people in basketball, you cannot look at players just off of stats alone. You'll be fooling yourselves if you do that. Same thing in the NFL, same thing in any sport. Boxing is the same way. Punch stats do not tell the whole story. They never do. However, I find interesting just the wide gulf between the emotional reactions to the people who thought this should have been closer than 116, 112 for Chris Eubank Jr. to what the punch stats tell us about this fight. And I always say also, punch stats, I don't know if they're always 100% accurate. It's a very difficult thing to track, especially in a fight like this. But the people who track this do a great job, and they've been doing it for a long time. Okay, Kapu Box is the best of the best. And I don't say that just because they follow me on Twitter. Okay, here we go. Round 1. Chris Eubank Jr., 14 of 48. Conor Benn, 7 of 25. A lot of people would say Conor Benn won that round. I saw a lot of people giving Conor Benn the first 3 rounds. I thought round 1, watching it live, was more of a swing. Now, it's important to note that Chris Eubank Jr. did land several jabs, more jabs in this round. But this was surprising because to me, this felt like a swing round. I leaned it towards Chris Eubank Jr. live, and the numbers say like this is absolutely a Chris Eubank Jr. round. So I feel good about that. Rounds 2 and 3 I had for Conor Benn in the moment. And the numbers would tell you here, Conor Benn, more accurate in round 2, not as busy. But again, a lot of the punches for Chris Eubank Jr., they are jabs, and no power punches in this round. Absolute 0. You see here, down here, 0 for 9 in terms of power punches for Chris Eubank Jr. 0 for 9. So everything he landed in this round was a jab. 16 for 50 in terms of jabs. To me, that's an easy Conor Benn round because of the damage. 6 of 16 power punches. Conor Benn was really, like, early on in the fight, he looked almost on unsteady ground, but he was throwing a lot of force behind these punches, getting himself off balance at times. And it felt like at some point, Chris Eubank Jr. could just lure him into a lead left uppercut and knock him off balance or knock him down while he's off balance. But he didn't fall for that trap. And surprisingly, nobody went down in this fight, despite how both guys looked at various points. Okay, round 3. We have Chris Eubank Jr. right here. 18 of 43 landed total. Conor Benn, 10 of 33. Now, this says it should be a wide Chris Eubank Jr. round, even though many people, including myself, felt like that might have been a Conor Benn round in the moment. I do think Conor Benn may have landed more than 10 punches, but there was force behind that. So 6 of 16 again in power punches, the same exact thing he was in round 2. And over here, Chris Eubank Jr., 2 of 10. So again, mostly a jab fest for Chris Eubank Jr. And at this point, I felt like he was starting to catch his rhythm a little bit more, but he wasn't quite there yet. Round 4 is where I felt like, okay, this is the best Chris Eubank Jr. round so far of the fight, of that early portion, the first 33% of the fight. So Chris Eubank Jr. is 21 of 49 in this round. I thought he was great. He was mixing it up a little bit more too, because you see here 13 of 28 jabs, but there's the key right here, down here. 8 of 21 power punches. Conor Benn, 9 of 21 power punches, so about even there. Obviously, very little jabs. Conor Benn was not really interested in throwing a jab tonight, which honestly could have done him in, because you want to start with the jab in a lot of cases. But he was a shorter fighter and having trouble finding his range at times. He was at range early on, and then he was overreaching at times and honestly putting himself in positions to be countered by Chris Eubank Jr. So that's a Chris Eubank Jr. round. So I had it 2-2 after the first 4. Okay, 5 through 7, I also felt like this was where Chris Eubank Jr. was tilting the fight, or had tilted the fight in his direction. So rounds 5 through 7, 19 of 53, 25 of 62, and 33 of 79 right here from Chris Eubank Jr. That's good work there by him. Conor Benn, 13 of 32 by comparison, 12 of 44, 17 of 51, and Chris Eubank Jr. started to throw more power punches. So over here, you have a 5 of 14, but then you have a 12 of 27 in round 6, one of his best rounds of the fight, not just statistically, but if you watch it. And then in round 7 here, 14 of 35. Conor Benn was able to pour it on some in this round. I remember that. He was landing some shots as well, but felt like Chris Eubank Jr. did a little bit more. So right there, you're looking at, it could be 5-2 for Chris Eubank. That's what the numbers would tell you. And that's what watching live, round 1 live felt like a swing round. So 4-3, not out of the question, but I felt like you had to have Chris Eubank Jr. ahead after 7 rounds. To me, this is a 4-3 or 5-2 lead for Chris Eubank Jr. Then here it flips a little bit. Conor Benn, 24-59. A lot of people gave round 8 to Conor Benn. 37 of 99 for Chris Eubank Jr. The output is there, and he's starting to realize, okay, like I can really take a stranglehold on this fight. The power punches here, 20 of 62, 23 of 53, a lot more accuracy from the power punches for Conor Benn. And if you were watching round 8, Conor Benn really rocked Chris Eubank Jr. toward the end there. Like in those last 45, 30 seconds or so, that was when this fight started to really become a war toward the end. So Conor Benn, in terms of damage, like you have to give him this round, I feel like, in round 8. Then in round 9, it's an extension of that. A lot of back and forth. Statistically, Conor Benn very accurate, rocking Chris Eubank Jr. on multiple occasions once again. And then over here, you have 32 of 87 for Chris Eubank Jr., which is kind of ridiculous. But obviously here on the power punching, Chris Eubank Jr., 24-67, Conor Benn, 21 of 48. So the accuracy is in favor of Conor Benn. Chris Eubank Jr. was missing a lot. Conor Benn as well, to some extent, but doing a better job in terms of accuracy. And remember, he's not really jabbing at all, 3 for 7. So at this point, I feel like 5-4 Chris Eubank Jr. is probably the correct call, because Conor Benn starts gaining momentum back here. And then the last 3 rounds. So you have 43 of 104, 52 of 109 for Chris Eubank Jr. and 57 of 122. Conor Benn, 26 of 65, can't really match the output. 30 of, is that 86 or 96? Either way, it's a lot less than Chris Eubank Jr. And then 29 of 78, the accuracy all in favor of Chris Eubank Jr. Round 10, closer. He's landing a lot fewer punches, but closer. But Chris Eubank Jr., I thought, really took control of 11 and 12. That's where he gets it for me. Felt like at minimum, Chris Eubank Jr. was up 5-4 after 9, let's say. And then I think he gets 11 and 12. So from there, you're looking at 115, 113, 7 rounds to 5. At a minimum, you can get pretty easily to 8-4, 116, 112. Where I can't really get is Conor Benn winning. If you want to find a case for a draw, I think it's kind of difficult to have that case, even in watching the fight, especially after the last couple rounds. But I think you can build that case. Conor Benn, I don't think, won this fight. Statistically, the power punches from Chris Eubank Jr. Now the jabs are going out the window because he's jabbing a lot less. He goes from 42 to 37 to 20 to 13 in round 10, up to 15 and 11 and 8. Just 8 jabs in round 12. He was not trying to hear that jab shit. 37 of 91, 44 of 94, 54 of 114. Chris Eubank Jr. threw 114 power punches in a round, landed 54 of them. That's 47.4%. That's nuts. That's fucking ridiculous. And then you look at Conor Benn here. This is actually ridiculous too. 25 of 59, 30 of 73, 28 of 70. These numbers are preposterous. Absolutely preposterous. Look at the jabs in round 12. 1 of 8, 3 of 8. 16 jabs in a round where there were literally 200 punches thrown. 78 for Conor Benn, 122 for Chris Eubank Jr. That's exactly 200 punches, and only 16 of them were jabs. Ridiculous, right? So the final punch stats report: 369 for Chris Eubank Jr., just bottom of the screen. 369 landed for Chris Eubank Jr. out of 912. That's 40% landed. And then you have here Conor Benn, 215 of almost 600, 593. This is 36% landed of his punches. The jabs, Conor Benn didn't even throw that many, 35 of 137. Chris Eubank Jr., 140 of 350. And then the power punches goes to Chris Eubank Jr. as well, 227 out of 562. It's 40%. And Conor Benn, 180 out of 456. So a little bit closer there, but still 47 behind. And if you just look at the numbers, like, this is a straight up Chris Eubank Jr. fight. I don't know what to tell you. Like, there's a rematch clause. It was reported on the broadcast. We may get this fight again, and I think there will be a lot of money in this fight if we get it again, especially if we do it at another stadium in the UK. But man, I don't see where Conor Benn won this fight for people who are contesting that. It was a great fight. I think it's the fight of the year. I think it's the fight of the year to this point. It's only April, so it has time to get beat, but their fathers were there. The crowd was awesome. I thought the crowd in the UK is awesome. I think the United Kingdom, the UK, does the best job in boxing of making a fight feel big. They're better at it than the United States is at this point. Caleb Plant just had a virtual press conference for a fight in 2025. The UK does the best job of making fights feel big. Even, and this is something I always appreciate about culture in the UK, boxing culture in the UK, their British title fights feel massive. The Commonwealth title fights, the fights where you have the British, the Commonwealth, the international title, sometimes you have the European Championship, those fights feel big. People out here in the States, they fight for the IBF USBA title. Nobody gives a shit. They fight for the WBC Continental Americas. Nobody gives a shit. The international title, nobody gives a shit, because everything is about just championships or bust, and just misery all in between. And that goes for every sport. So nobody here gives a shit about international titles, intercontinental titles. And I think there should be value to those titles. I understand why some fans don't give a shit, but I think in the UK, they do a good job of giving a shit, and we don't. So hats off to y'all. Great fight, great crowd, fight of the year. Hope that we see it again. And shout out to Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn. That was a show. That was gutsy. And that was just a good old school rivalry fight. That's all we have. Make sure you check out other stuff on this channel. We just did a video about how stupid Ryan Garcia and Rolly Romero fighting for a welterweight title is. That shit should not be for a welterweight title. But that's another story for another video. One that's already out, so you should watch it. Take care, and we'll talk again very soon.